Hi, good afternoon, everybody. This is Elizabeth McNamara with East Greenwich News, and I'm here today with Dr. Mark Schwager, who happens to be our Town Council President. Welcome, Mark, and thank you for joining me today for this opportunity to just chat with you.
Thank you, my pleasure. I'm glad that East Greenwich News is making this opportunity available. I saw some of the candidate forums the other night, and it's really useful information for the community. So thank you.
We're starting to get the hang of the virtual thing, I think. Better late than never. The reason we're doing these individual interviews with the town councilors this time is that all 5 are running unopposed. So the thought was, okay, we don't really need to have a forum where people are trying to highlight their differences. But it is always nice to check in and talk individually with people. So that was the idea. So, the first thing I was thinking of, and I asked you before we went live, was, how long you have been a town council member. But, you had said you were in for 2 terms, then off for 2 terms, and now this will be term number 4 in this next.
Well, if I'm reelected, it'll be a total of my 6th term.
Yeah, so 6.
Two in the beginning when I was a newbie, and then I came around a second time. Yeah, I'm getting a little bit of an echo from you, Elizabeth. I don't know how am I coming through?
I am not hearing any echo at all. Let me plug in and see if that helps. Let's hope.
That is much better.
Oh, good.
Perfect. Yeah, I've been doing this for a while. So I've been in East Greenwich since the 90s. Came here with my wife, Pat Flanagan, Dr. Flanagan. We have our 3 kids who we raised here, went through the school system, all launched successfully into adulthood. And I had a medical practice here for a number of years on South County Trail. I'm a primary care physician. I don't have that practice anymore, but I actually am still doing some practice in East Greenwich at St. Elizabeth's home, so still in the community a bit. And one of the things that I've been very interested in is public service for a long time. And when I came to East Greenwich and really fell in love with the community from living here, I combined my interest in the community with my want to do public service by participating in local government. So when I first came on, I was on the land trust, and then I was on the planning board. I was a fire commissioner. I still hadn't had enough at that point, so I ran for council, and then I've been on the council. This will be, I think I have a pretty good chance of being reelected. So
yeah, I would think so.
Total of my 6th term on the council.
During those years, you had your 2 terms in the aughts, or was it the 8?
I was on 2006, 2008.
Okay.
6 and 8. With Mike Isaacs.
And then
10, 12, I was off. I was a fire commissioner during that interval. The fire department, while I was on that on the commission, the fire department came over into the town.
Right.
At that time, it was an independent fire district, as you know.
Doesn't that seem like a million years ago now?
It really does. It really wasn't all that long ago.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was interesting. It was a very different structure for the fire department.
Yeah.
For many years, I guess going back to the beginning of the town, it had an independent fire district here.
It was almost like it had its own town council in charge of it. Was fire district commissioners that were in charge of just the fire department.
That's right. It was an independent municipal government. The fire districts are municipal governments, and they actually have the authority to levy taxes. So we would set a tax rate, and you would get 2 tax bills. You'd get a town bill and you'd get a fire bill.
Yeah.
And then when that came into the town, I was ready to get back and run again. So I ran for the council and came on in 2014.
Right. And you've been, and some tumultuous times, but I was wondering, how is East Greenwich? Do you feel like things have changed a lot in East Greenwich
in the years that you've served, the first, in the aughts and now in the last several years? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I'm not pointing anywhere in particular, but just
no, it's interesting because when you've lived in town for a while, as you have, and you look back, there really have been a lot of changes to the town over the last 25 years. It's gone from I hate to say a dairy farm town, which it was initially, and then it was a suburban development, but it's now becoming increasingly developed as far as Route 2, waterfront, Main Street, new buildings that we put up, the police department, Swift Gym was redone, the Scalloptown Park, a lot of things that we did over the years that have changed the town. The population really hasn't grown that much, which it seems like a lot denser though. It's busier. The New England Institute of Technology came, so we became a university town. So there really have been a lot of changes, and town government, I think, has become increasingly professionalized and complex. There's so many regulatory requirements, oversight, dealings with DEM, with the state. It just is a much more complex organization than it was even 10 or 15 years ago.
I'm not sure I realized that. Of course, people who have been here, who grew up here and have been here for 50 years or longer, I think a lot of, some of them lament the changes that have come. Now, I think that happens with any town that you grow up in. You kind of look back if you move away or not, and oh, gee, it's not like it was when I grew up. But and in New England, I think because of our traditional small towns, has East Greenwich lost a bit of that small town feel, or is it possibly coming back with all this infill development? I'm curious about that. We're going to have more people living downtown than there have been for a while, which will be interesting.
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, and it's one of the interesting things about being involved in local government is that balance. How do you keep the town with all the unique qualities that attracted people here, and yet also change with the times? And I think one thing is important to realize is that the town is not a museum. It's a living community that changes as the larger society changes around us. Depending on how people are working and what families look like, what schools look like, the town is going to reflect that. One thing that is important for most towns to be vibrant communities is growth. New businesses, new families coming into your community keeps a community vital. It provides for tax base. It provides for amenities and services for the community. The communities in Rhode Island that are losing population or not growing are struggling. They have to carry buildings and infrastructure that is a fixed cost that they can't afford if their tax base shrinks. They're losing businesses, and they don't have the fun type of community life that we have. With parades and with, unfortunately, with COVID, a lot of these things have been shut down. But with Summer's End, with a vibrant religious community with multiple churches, we have a synagogue in town now. So the growth provides a lot of amenities, but a lot of challenges. And that's the task that the council is facing, is balancing growth and development in a way that we can take advantage of the good parts of that and try to mitigate the difficulties with traffic and stresses on our town services, on our schools with increased growth, and changing some of the character of the open space, open land, the look of the town.
We could just kind of segue, this is a nice segue perhaps into that talk of development and the comprehensive permit process that has brought bigger developments to town, including potentially this 416 or 18 unit complex that's proposed, and it's very preliminary stages, but proposed for west, way west on the western corner of town on Division, or off of Division, and that would be a whole neighborhood, really, quite a neighborhood there. And I know there are people who are worried. There's worries about traffic, obviously, and things like that. But the other piece of that is town services. Now, those people all pay into, they would be taxpayers, largely, depending. They might, if there's any Section 8 housing, those units would not be paying taxes, but most other units, and probably in this instance, the units that they're planning would be, you'd get some property tax. Would that offset the cost, from what you understand, of increased town services? We'd need maybe just some more personnel, which costs money, of course, and potentially more classroom space, which is
sure. I mean, those are the questions, and those are the unknowns that we need to look into. It's interesting because a lot of people say to me, this development, one development or another one that's proposed is too big. Okay, what does that mean? It's too big. I mean, what is the impact what is the negative impact, and how do you quantify that? So, for example, people say to me, okay, this development is going to have too much traffic. So we have to quantify that. So we, for the planning board, will require a planning study. And so we will be able to estimate as best we can on the plans that are submitted for any development, what the traffic impact will be. And then the planning board or the council, depending on how the application is progressing, then they have to decide how that can be mitigated. In other words, if you can demonstrate that the roads cannot handle the proposed traffic, then the planning board can say that we are not going to accept this plan. It's not appropriate, and this is the reason why. Because developers have property rights, and we can't basically go in and say, in my opinion, this is too big. We don't like it.
Or even we like that. We never thought there were going to be buildings here. We didn't ever think that people were going to build on this land, and which I think we all kind of don't realize. Like, you might move in somewhere and not realize that beautiful wooded lot next to you could someday be a house. But somebody else owns that property, and they do have rights to be able to develop it.
I mean, there is a tension there. I mean, people who are in the community and they do have an expectation, and in many ways it's well founded, that the community will maintain its character over time, and that's part of the responsibility of the municipal government. But on the other hand, the competing interests are landowners, developers, and as I said, there's many positive aspects to development as well. So it's a interesting discussion. There are a lot of opportunities for public input. There are abilities to mitigate adverse impact on the town. It's interesting because when I was looking into this, I looked back at some of the census reports going back to the 1950s, 40s and 50s. And East Greenwich at that time, I may be a little bit wrong on my decades, but we had 3,000 or 4,000.
I've done a little bit of that myself, and you're right.
And so the census is every 10 years. So what I would see is every 10 years, the percent increase in the town population. And we had some decades where the population increased 20, 30, or 40% in one decade.
Wow.
The whole town's population. So we went from like 3,500, to like 4,500 or 5,000 in a decade. And I'm asking myself, why didn't the town implode at that time? In other words, it increased by 30%. It would be unimaginable that we could do that now. But I think the reason is that much of the development occurs slowly, and there is a way to address some of the financial impacts, the traffic impacts, the school impacts, the open space impacts. There's a way to do that and still allow that growth to occur.
Well, one of the challenges though with this is the affordable housing mandate of, we're supposed to have 10%. Right now we're on our way to 7, but really if you just count what we have now, it's less than 5%. So these developers do have sway. I mean, it's hard to say no to a development because of, if they're promising, let's say 25% affordable housing, and that could help us get closer to the 10% mark. It's hard to say no and win at the state court level.
This issue of affordable housing is another very interesting example of competing considerations. I mean, it really is just competing considerations, because affordable housing in Rhode Island is a major problem for our state. And if you look at it from a statewide basis, the economic vitality of our state is threatened by affordable housing. Rhode Island is way behind the availability of affordable housing, looking at our New England neighbors, Massachusetts and Connecticut. And I was reading about Massachusetts investing in affordable housing. It is significantly more. I don't have the numbers, available to give you the detailed numbers, but it's significantly more investment in affordable housing in Massachusetts than in Rhode Island. And that is preventing some businesses from and the economy from developing if you can't get affordable housing for people coming in to work. So on the statewide level, affordable housing may be affecting us. And in East Greenwich as a town, affordable housing may also be an issue. As we develop as a town, we now have New England Institute of Technology. We have a thriving restaurant business. We want to do things with our waterfront. We need the workers who are going to work in those businesses. There are a lot of advantages to having those workers live in town. We have Route 2, all the medical office buildings. So all these medical office buildings, which is a really vital corridor in our town, there's people who work in there, the medical assistants, the secretaries, the people who do the ultrasound, work in the radiology suites. These are not affluent residents of East Greenwich, but living here could be very beneficial to our local businesses to have that workforce available locally, decrease turnover, easier recruitment. So there's a lot of benefits to an economy to have affordable housing. When you talk about 10%, it's a 10% minimum. I mean, even at 10%, there was a story on NPR that I was listening to yesterday morning about the lack of affordable housing in South County, in North Kingstown and South Kingstown, Narragansett, and people really being displaced and really under the stress of COVID with loss of wages. Really a big problem with people having just safe and affordable places to live. So there is that balancing of considerations in town. You mentioned the comprehensive permits, which make it more difficult for cities and towns to regulate development. They still do have oversight, but it is not as robust as it would be in a typical application.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess the push-pull there is that if a town were allowed to say no to, affordable housing, it may well say no to affordable housing. So the state is kind of giving affordable housing a little more of a chance by saying, "Hey, you need to reach us,"
I think you're exactly right, and the state made a decision that this was a major obstacle to economic development and also just the quality of life for the residents of the state by passing this legislation requiring the 10% minimum. And this was not done a year ago or 10 years ago. It was 1997 that was passed.
Really?
So,
wow.
Yeah, that was this mandate to get to the 10% level. So it's been almost 25 years, and the state is not overrun by affordable housing. That's not to say that there has not been challenges with development for affordability, but again, it has not solved the problem. Since 1997, our town is still, as you say, below 5%, although it looks like we're going to be boosted quite a bit from some new developments. So that is will meet that state requirement. Or we'll be closer to meeting that state requirement.
Getting closer. Yeah. Yep. So you are running, and we kind of jumped right into that, but why are you running for reelection?
I don't know what else to do. No, I mean, this is something that I've been doing for a long time. It's just a part of my involvement in the community. I mean, as long as I live in East Greenwich, I enjoy being involved in local government. So if I wasn't for elected office, I would consider being on a board or commission. It's just something that has been important to me for a long time. And now that I have some experience and opportunity to make some positive impacts in the community, I think I really want to continue those efforts. I mean, one of the reasons to run again is because of the team that I'm working with right now. I mean, you just can't ask for, as a president of a council, to be in a better position. I mean, we ran as a slate, so we've got 5 people who are pulling in the same direction. And so you have a really unified council that has a pretty unified strategic plan. We ran on a common platform, this open and effective town government, excellence in education, and a strong sense of community. So we ran on that platform. And I think over the last 2 years, we've really made a lot of progress implementing a lot of pieces of that platform. And now, as part of that platform, we've recruited some real professional management. And we have Andy Nada as our town manager. We have a finance director, a new solicitor. We brought in Ursula Tights and Rich. We've got a real team, new finance director. We've got a real team that I'm excited to be a part of. So I do want to continue. You know, you're always, when you've been out doing this for a while, you have to have an exit strategy. You can't do it forever. You're either going to be term limited, or you're going to just figure that it's time to turn it over to someone else. But you know, I feel that I can make a contribution with this team, and it's really fun to participate with this group and the community as well. I mean, after 2018, when our slate came in, I just was so energized by the community really supporting our agenda. And so I'm excited to continue to try to progress with what we've started.
It was an interesting election. I know probably most of the people that might be watching this know this, but that election, all 5 of you're all Democrats, a Democratic slate, won office, and you were the only one running for re-election. But East Greenwich had never seen of all Democratic town council ever. So that's been a big sea change. And I don't know does that mean that East Greenwich is no longer, you know, a Republican town, or, you know, is this an aberration with just some of the circumstances in the last few years, or who knows? But it is interesting, especially now. There's also not going to be any Republicans on the school committee, so it's you have a team of people to work with in a way that you never have. You were always in the minority prior.
But, you know, some of that was not based on party. I mean, I have a team. We did run as a slate, and we are all Democrats, and I'm happy to be a Democrat. But I have to say that I was on some councils that were very unified. And we're a great team that did not break along party lines, because I was, for my first 2 terms, I was the only Democrat, and I served 3 terms under Michael Isaacs, who was the town council president, and we were a team. It was not partisan. And then there were most of my mentors when I was learning the ropes on the council were Republicans. I mean, Henry Bosey, under his wing, he had been in town forever. Marilyn Kiesel, Sharon Annicelli, you know, Michael, Carl Hoyer, you know, Carl. And so
and I
was just like a whippersnapper at that time. And these And these counselors, they put me on boards and commissions. I said, I'm interested in getting in town government. And Carl Hoyer said to me, I have a spot for you on the land trust. And so, the team is, now the environment is very different with politics, but it's not necessarily based on partisanship. And our team is, at the local level, at the lower level, the partisanship, I think, is less. As you move up the ladder, it gets more and more. The influence of politics and the influence of money take bigger and bigger importance. But on our council meeting, I don't think the party affiliation really is prominent in either our agenda or our meetings, or even our platform. Our platform is pretty much, roads, fire department, schools, kind of bread and butter municipal services.
Well, it makes me think that, there were no independents, no Republicans ran against, are running right now. So what is that like for you? Does that make you feel good? Like, oh, hey, the town's behind us? That nobody felt compelled to run?
There is a feeling of satisfaction in having some goals that you want to achieve in public service and moving forward in being able to achieve them. So, when I was on the council before this one, I felt that I was stymied in doing some of the work that I thought I could be helpful in. And now to be elected with this team and then not have to run again, in a competitive is really, I think, as a local politician, just doesn't get any better than this. This is not going to get better as a volunteer local elected official. But the other thing I would say about not having an election is that it gave our council an extra 4 months of office. In other words, it's almost like our term was extended by 4 months, because I used to call from June until November, the silly season, every 2 years, because you spend much of your time running for a reelection. It could be time consuming, it could be frustrating. There was a lot of misinformation, and all your decisions that you tried to make were politicized. So if I was for or against something in July or August before an election, it was somehow because of politics, or I was doing it to be elected, or I was trying to, return a favor to somebody. But when you're not running for re-election, we had the whole summer and into the fall to just do town business. And we did a lot. We've been managed to just keep our agendas full, and we didn't have to be distracted by running a re-election campaign. So that was a big advantage for this council.
Obviously, COVID-19 presents a problem for the world, but for East Greenwich in particular, what do you see the biggest challenges are going to be for us in coming months? And how do you think Town Manager Nada has handled things so far?
Well, I think we've been very fortunate in a number of areas as far as our leadership. The manager has been very skilled in communicating to the citizens and advocating for the town as far as resources. So we've been able to procure things like PPE and other things that have helped the town respond to the COVID challenge. For example, we were very early on starting to anticipate impact on businesses. So we passed ordinances which allowed businesses to waive some of the impacts on parking and capacity so that they could expand onto the street, they could increase their capacity. And we also early on started to look into how could we extend the season for the merchants into the fall. So when the governor announced a $1 million fund to fund things that could help the merchants stay open, like tents, heaters, carpeting, lighting, those types of things. Barricades to keep the traffic away from the sidewalk. We were all set and ready to go when that proposal came out, and we did enter a proposal, and we were awarded $75,000 to pursue that. And I think Andy was very much tuned in to what was happening statewide through the calls that he participated on with the governor, League of Cities and Towns. So that was great. The schools did an amazing job in an impossible situation. Alexis Meyer stepped into, a hurricane and always was cool, calm, and collected. The school committee really, to open the schools, I just would sit back at the council meetings and I would just say, I've got the easy job. They're really right in the thick of things. And now they're successfully open. And it's interesting because schools do not look like the focus of spreading of COVID.
Yeah.
I think schools are going to make it. The biggest challenge in schools is not so much the kids, is the staff. Either the staff themselves, by staff, I mean, everything from bus drivers and custodians and teachers' aides and teachers themselves. Those people may get sick themselves, or they may be called on to take care of family members. Yeah. So I think the kids will be okay. I'm just concerned about the other staff will be a challenge. Yeah,
I know that East Greenwich, along with every other city and town in Rhode Island, I think is eagerly signing up people to be substitutes because of that issue. So you feel like you've been working well. Town manager Nada seems very well plugged in the state.
Yeah.
And you've been, he's only been here a little over a year, right? September last year. So
started right after Labor Day last year.
It's been a big 13 months. Are you pleased with who you hired?
What had popped into my head when you mentioned the response, some other things that really came on was the ability of the manager to keep town hall and public services running. Because when we really went into shutdown, a lot of town halls just shut down. They just closed doors and turned off the lights. And what Andy did was try to make sure that we could continue providing town services. And that applied to all the services, the finance department, the clerical department. DPW was mostly out in the field, so they had a little less concern, but we made modifications to the buildings and to the schedules, and we kept the doors open, and we continued to run. We never closed. We never closed the town hall. It was by appointment only, and you'd have to make a phone call, but people could come in. We also made sure that we provided services to seniors, because the senior center was all shut down. Many of those seniors required, they got their meals and their services at Swift Gym at the senior center. So we were able to put together a network of employees to deliver food to Shoreside.
And town councilors, as I recall.
We stepped in a little bit, and that was early on when things were pretty crazy, and to assemble people to go into congregate housing like Shoreside, a big apartment building, that took a lot of planning and organization. So and we procured PPE for our first responders through avenues that the state was able to provide. So I was happy that we were able to keep the town going during those initial days when we didn't really know how bad things were going to get. We just it was almost day by day.
Alan Clark.
Yes.
You know Alan Clark? So Alan has this thing. He's actually on the board of EG News and a historian, for those of you who don't know. And I call him our local curmudgeon. But one of the things he thinks the town should have wards instead of at large, everybody being at large. Because he said, nobody lives downtown. None of the town councilors actually live downtown. 4 out of the 5 live west of Route 2. And one lives over by, the southern part of town near North Kingstown town line. I don't know. I get that. But do you feel like it's harder to appreciate what it's like to be downtown if nobody happens to live downtown?
Yeah, no, I certainly can appreciate his concern that some areas may not be represented.
Fully represented, yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, in a small town of 13,000 to split it into wards, is just it just it's interesting because the state of Rhode Island, until I don't remember when they did that reform, we had about twice the number of state reps.
Wow!
And senators. This was since I've been in Rhode Island, where they cut down the number of reps. I think there's I don't even remember how many reps there are, 78 reps or something like that. But it used to be like 150 or something like that. So they cut it way down. Because the thought was that the districts were just so small that it became unwieldy, and you just had too many people.
I can't even imagine fitting that many representatives in the state house in their chamber.
I think East Greenwich News may want to run a story on.
Yeah,
but they did shrink down the size of the house
considerably. Yeah. Anyway, I mean that's kind of a funny little side thought. And I obviously somebody from down here needs to want to run first before we'll have local representation. And maybe we're so small it doesn't matter.
It is so
not
small.
quite sure.
It is so small that it's the kind of thing where, for example, you look at the noise and the traffic and the parking problems that were down in the Harbor District. We were knocking on doors, and people, the residents down there, really, grabbed us by the arm and said, "We got some concerns down here," and they really were able to get their message directly to the councilors, and they got our phones, and it's not like the governor. If you're in a big state, the governor lives 400 miles away.
Right.
You bump into these people, and they have your phone number, and they're calling you, and so they're not represented on the council. But it's one of the nice things about local government is you can just call any of the councilors and give them an earful, and it's pretty easy to do.
Do a lot of people do that to you? Do they give you an earful?
They do. But that's
how often? I mean, do people call you up or email? Like, how often are you hearing from people? And is it really cyclical, depending on?
It depends on the issue. I mean, it really depends on the issue. But there are some regulars, people who just like every couple of months, they'll just call up with, their latest review of town politics or something that they are either happy with or unhappy with.
Do you have any regrets over these last 2 years? Anything you feel like I or we as a council could have handled that differently?
Well,
again, I'm not thinking of anything in particular. Just curious.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest regret is that our strategic plan got sidetracked. I kept asking the manager to help us put together a strategic plan, and he went to the woodshed and kind of brought it back to the council, and we were just beginning to go through it.
That's right.
To prioritize it. I mean, I think it's a 9-page document.
Yeah, I remember this now.
There is so much great stuff on there, but I mean, some of the highlights, a waterfront study, which we've already, moving that forward, parking study, moving that forward, capital improvements, like we were looking at a plan to, instead of having to bond some of our capital improvements, we could just put them in the operating budget. So we'd have always some money each year in our operating budget for parks and recreation and roads. We had a lot of other things looking at our comprehensive community plan. We were talking about, is development going too fast in East Greenwich? Well, our comprehensive community plan was put together just around the time of a little bit after the recession in 2008, 2009. And so we didn't really anticipate brisk growth in East Greenwich. So our plan, although we had, our plan is good for 10 years or more, it's already becoming outdated because the environment now is that we're under a lot of development pressure. People, as you mentioned, we have infill in the downtown area, and even west of Route 2, we've got big suburban housing developments going in there. So The frustration is that a lot of our strategic plan has kind of been sidetracked, and we're kind of waiting now for the other shoe to drop as far as the state budget and the federal assistance, and it's just hard for us to really move forward with our priorities until we see how that's going to look, and also what's going to happen in the wintertime with COVID. It's looking. I'm concerned what the winter is going to look like.
Yeah. It is a little concerning right now that we're having problems, and it's all because maybe we're just being a little too comfortable. We need to wear our masks more inside and things like that. Yeah, fingers crossed. In terms of the budget, so I know traditionally the town council has tried to keep any tax increase below 2%. You could, by state allows a town to go up to 4% increase over the previous year. But traditionally, East Greenwich has tried to keep it 2% or lower. Is that something you would also try to do again this year, even if that meant furloughs or layoffs or a reduction or in some not vital town services? I mean, everything's vital, right? But I guess a few things are a little less vital.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because to really even think about the 22 budget, we're in the 2021 budget now.
Yes.
But even to think about a 2022 budget and a new tax rate, it really would depend on how we land in 2021. Just for people who are watching, the budget that we're in now started July 1st and it ends June 30th, 2021. Yeah. So, until we really know where we are going to finish, I'm not even sure where to start for the other budget, because usually at this time of the year, we're almost halfway through the fiscal year. We started July 1st, the end of the year, we're halfway through. We're not even going to know what our state revenues are before we're halfway through. So it gives us less and less time to adjust our budget, our current budget, based on these shortfalls. I mean, the governor's had, I think, I'm trying to think where this was reported, but the governor had asked the department heads at the state level to submit one contingency budget with a 15% reduction. So 15% reduction in our state aid to education, our pilot funds, our the motor vehicle tax, other. We get
that would be several $100,000, right?
Oh, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah. I mean, our school aid alone, our school aid is $3.4 million. So if you cut 15%
of that,
you're already up to $450,000. So, and we have a lean budget. We put together a lean budget because we wanted to keep some reserves available in the event that there was a shortfall in revenue. We've already made some cuts. We had some positions that we eliminated. We had some positions that we didn't fill. We cut our capital improvement. Our capital improvement fund is supposed to be $800,000. We cut it down to $100,000. So we don't have any room to cut capital projects. We've already done that. We're already pretty tight right now.
I know a lot of people, kind of think that there's always extra money there, that there's a way to cut and you should run the government more like a business. And then I've been through enough of these budget things to know that there isn't a lot of fat out there, I guess. And of course, the biggest costs are salaries. And you guys went through collective bargaining agreements. When are they up again?
They'll be up again in 22.
22. So you've got a little bit of time there, but there was no thought to go to the unions at this point and kind of go, hey, we can't give you the raise, and or
not at this time. Not at this time. To go back to reopen and see any bargaining units. Nothing like that.
Okay.
The collective bargaining agreements, those will come up again in a couple of years. So, but we're going to probably want to start the conversation as early as possible with the bargaining units.
On a kind of a different tact, I've just been asking people about the fact that, East Greenwich only has one woman police officer and no people of color service police officers. The fire department is all male, no people of color. And the town, of course, in some ways that reflects our town. We don't have a lot of, we're a pretty white community, really. How do we become more welcoming to people who might want to come work here, who aren't, who might be Black or Latino or Hispanic, Latino, sorry. How do we do that as a community? Do we become more welcoming?
I'm not sure that I have a good answer. I think I can tell you maybe some basic building blocks that we should consider. I mean, one is to, I think, really embrace the idea that diversity is an advantage, that a diverse community has a lot of strengths that make the community more vital, more resilient, and more interesting. And the second is that if you want to bring a more diverse group into your employee pool, you have to set the intention to do that. I'm not exactly sure how you do that, other than you have to set the intention. You can't just say, well, we would welcome an applicant, we welcome, Black or Latino applicants or more women. You have to set your intention, and then you have to implement a policy which does that. And how we do that, I'm not sure, but we are developing a very good human resource department in town. I mean, for many years, human resources was not a strong area in town government. As it has become increasingly complicated, HR is getting a lot more emphasis, and the manager has also emphasized that area as well. So over time, I think as our HR department develops some skills and some tools, that there are ways to, once you set that intention, to put them into action by advertising in certain areas, by making certain connections with schools or with training centers, by other ways that you can try to make those intentions a reality.
So is that something that you as a town council president are pushing?
Well, something I'm interested in. I think as a council, we have talked about issues of diversity. Recently over the summer, it was quite a tumultuous summer with the issues of social justice and police issues related to the Black community. And it came to council meeting, and we did discuss it, and we want to be part of the conversation. We want to be part of the conversation and talk to the community. We have student groups who have been involved with this conversation. We have the interfaith community locally that's been involved. So I think that there are groups in the community that are having this conversation, and the town wants to be part of that and see how we can do our part to address issues of social justice.
We are rounding up to 4 p.m. and So I think maybe we will kind of pull this to a close. Is there something I'm missing that you kind of were hoping we were going to talk about and I haven't touched on? We kind of, I let us ramble a bit, partly because I feel like you have a lot of, you've been in this, doing this for a while, and it would just be fun to hear some of your perspectives. So I didn't necessarily have this boilerplate of things I thought we should hit, but is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to?
We'll have to do part 2.
Well, we could do that. We could do that.
One thing that did pop into my mind, though, when I'm sorry, sometimes you ask a question and then we'll move on and suddenly something will pop back in. But when you talk about, is there a lot of fat in the budget and can you cut from the budget? The main issue is, as you said, that like 70% of our budget is personnel costs. And big issues that we face with personnel costs are healthcare benefits and retirement benefits. And so those, just to kind of set the stage for other conversations in the future, those are things you're going to be hearing a lot about, is how do we get a handle on our healthcare costs, and how do we start to look at a retirement and other post-employment benefits for retirees. Those are going to be big issues. When you're looking at town financial impact, those are things that are going to be important parts of the discussion.
All right. Well, thanks for that. We will circle back on that, I'm sure, especially when it gets closer to the time of the new contracts being developed. Just curious, this just kind of came to me, trying to think of something non-political or non-town council related, but something, where's a favorite spot for you to go to in town? Is there a park or someplace you like to walk that you just think, I love this spot?
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because often when I have a couple of favorite spots, and when I go there, I usually call my kids, and they say, Dad, where are you? Which spot are you in? So some people who know me know that I like to drink Dunkin' Donuts coffee. So I usually get a Dunkin' Donuts coffee, and then I have I think about 3 or 4 spots that I just love to go to. One is there's a park bench right on on Pierce Street, right next to Town Hall.
Right, looking down on King Street.
You look down King Street, and you just look down there, and it, whatever the season is, there's something just great about looking at it. So I love
that's a great spot.
The other one I do is I'll park down at the upper level of the boat launch, down off of Water Street, just up on the top there. And I just love sitting out, looking over the harbor. And it's the same kind of thing that every time of the year, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, it's a good spot too.
And then Bosch Farm, I'll go into the parking lot and just look out onto the field. You can see the farmhouse. You can see the animals from there. And then the one that's a little strange is I like sitting in the Dunkin' Donuts parking lot. It's kind of high up on Route 2 and Division. Yeah. You know that? So if you park facing the intersection, especially at night, it's just really cool. It's just like the lights from the East Greenwich Shopping Center. And it looks like we're in our little metropolis. That's a busy intersection. You see the trucks there. And so I like kind of sitting there. Depends if I want nature or urban landscape.
Or coffee. All right. Well, thank you so much, Mark. This was great. It went well, and I think the audio quality was finally okay. So thank you so much for this time. And maybe we'll be able to do more of this as we go forward, as we figured this out. So thanks, and see you around town. Thanks a lot. Thanks, everybody.